Most of us who saw Kantara in 2022 chose to overlook the simplicity of the uneven narrative of the film because the climax sequence had us in a trance on account of being nothing like anything seen in recent years in Indian cinema. Experiencing Rishab Shetty perform the Bhoota Kola, to put it simply, took our breath away. 3 years later, he's back with more. But as the saying goes, it may not be better. Hey all, my name is Sucharita. Welcome back to my channel where today we are talking about Kantara Chapter 1, the prequel, written and directed by Rishab Shetty, who also stars now in movie theatres. Before we proceed, please click that red button underneath this video and subscribe to the channel. There's so much more coming. Thank you. Set in 4th century CE, Kantara Chapter 1 tells the story of Berme, a young man from the jungles of Kantara, and how earthly life and divinity both lead him closer and closer to ancient deities and spirits. We had met these spirits in the original film as well, Panjurli and Guliga. This time, however, Berme is not a simpleton disconnected from his culture and roots. An extra-long exposition-laden voiceover in the beginning about old kings, their greed and battles against the local tribes brings us to the birth of Berme. Berme is an adopted baby who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere, raised deep in the forest. Simultaneously, you also meet the ancient royals, the ancestors of the zamindars. Blinded by their power and privilege, the kings feud with tribal communities and flourish by imposing unfair taxes on the local trade. Portuguese and Arabs are on Indian shores buying black pepper, bay leaves, turmeric from the Kantara tribal people, but most of the profit is going to the evil Bhangra kingdom. The ruthless Bhangras are the very image of what a divine power must come down to earth to eradicate. Residents of Kantara and the kings of Bhangra, however, do not know where the most bountiful Ishvara's garden of bloom is to obtain more spice. Enter the Kadapa tribe. These even more ferocious people in black face paint dwell deeper in the forest and using magical powers control the garden of bloom and have managed to misuse the powers of the Daivas too to their advantage. So clearly there is a lot happening in this film. To bring the entirety of the story to the big screen, Rishab Shetty teams up with production designer Bangalan, creating and crafting deeply researched sets, cities, villages, forests, caves, at par with what one might see in bigger productions like Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, Megalopolis. I do not exaggerate. Yeah. Ace cinematographer Arvind S. Kashyap also returns to do justice to the scale and create frames with the precision required to give this film its transcendental vibe. To these men, Kantara is not a mere story. It has to be an epic, especially keeping in mind the success and the reception of the first film. So Chapter 1 is intended to be a tale for the times, for the ages, and hence it requires the camera to look at its subjects with the devotion that will make them appear larger than life, mythical, lionizing even the smallest of characters and plot points. There are some chase sequences in this film that Rishab Shetty directs in the city market with this immense crew, which should be studied frame by frame for their technical achievements. They're marvelous. Now, as the film expands in scale, the narrative goes haywire. Too many short stories and subplots are piled on top of each other in quick succession, and the screenplay begins to veer further and further away from the film's central philosophy. A philosophy that is already buried way too deep underneath the visual splendor in front of you. So in 2022, Rishab Shetty's Shiva had an internal journey that created a satisfying and flawed and humane arc. From a sinner to a man who finds God. It felt like it was straight out of scripture, paying homage to the ancient cultures the film had borrowed from. The hero's journey was defined. Even when the story meandered, the structure of this hero's journey brought it back on course. Kantara Chapter 1 is too caught up in its desire to go where the audience wants it to be. Attempting to meet the viewers' needs, the film panders and stumbles quite dramatically, drowning in its own mysticism, both on screen and off it. The insertion of banal, unintelligent jokes and hammy comedy scenes almost feel insulting to the technical achievements of the set and the cinematography. So, when we have a literal tiger as a part of this cast, who may be flesh but may even be God, what are we adding with an extended subplot involving a royal guard and his affair with a local shopwoman? From the very first scene, this film wants to proceed at a breakneck pace, which sets it apart and gives it a great pace, sure. Hence, it is hard to understand why it pauses regularly to create comedy scenes around a tough man who is a laughingstock only because of his short stature. In moments when the film tonally shifts to comedy, it feels most farcical, operating at its least. Now, Rishab Shetty had said this in an interview that the genesis of the first Kantara movie was a true story about a conflict he had known of between a forest officer and a civilian. Who owns nature was the big question that film had tried to answer, concluding that humans are destined to perish if we dare to assume ownership at all. Chapter 1 doesn't allow itself to ruminate on such philosophical questions. There is no quietness here that may permit you to take in all the things this film is saying. There's no pause. So instead of indulging in self-expression, Rishab Shetty this time indulges in the needs of the audience. He builds on the premise of mystic ancient tribal practices, but his focus is on the violence splattered across the screenplay. If the Kantara people fighting against the royal army wasn't quite enough, around the interval mark he introduces the dreaded Kadapa tribe. For a large portion of its runtime, Kantara Chapter 1 doesn't have an access point, unlike its predecessor. I did notice that the audience seemed to be waiting for that one sequence you see in the trailer as well, when Rishab Shetty as Berme turns into Lord Shiva, complete with a trident and a snake. The moment got the most rousing response, making it evident that that might be the lasting visual the film actually wants you to take home. This felt inherently perfidious because Berme turning into an image of a Hindu god hardly connects to the rest of the film that we're watching. The digression makes little sense at this point. Gulshan Devaya remains one of my favorite performers. In his Kannada debut, he plays the loafer king Kulashekara, kind of mirroring Shiva from the original movie, except Kulashekara refuses to pay heed to the many opportunities he's provided to course correct. He's drunk with power, and he's also drunk quite literally on alcohol. This character is not novel. Think evil king and the first 5 things that come to mind. Gulshan is adequate, but his parts in, say, Guns and Gulabs, Dahar, they had more to offer. Rukmani Vasant plays Princess Kanakavati, a far more interesting foil to Berme, who's instantly smitten by her beauty, momentarily even forgetting that she is from the same family that enslaves his people. Caught between tradition and her own attraction to the strong rebellious leader, Kanakavati is at once a cultural ambassador, yet she is a colonist, but maybe even a reformer. Kantara Chapter 1 is largely designed around actor-director Rishab Shetty, who of course is a force to be reckoned with. Berme comes deified in this origin story, nary a shade of grey to be found. When the spirit of Guliga does possess him, the actor goes many steps further in designing a spectacle for his viewers. Rudra Guliga, Agni Guliga, and many others make an appearance in this one sequence. Watching him on a big screen as that primordial scream resonates around the theatre, bouncing off walls, the experience is electric, presented in a fashion that few other filmmakers have dared to touch. The Bhoota Kola performance is bewitching, and even in sequences where Berme is just normal human Berme, his execution, Rishab Shetty's execution of the action choreography is so majestic you want to stand up and applaud. But as more and more layers are added around Berme, you move farther and farther from the baseline inquiry of the film, settlers versus natives, and how slow or rapid does change need to be for customs, practices, and native civilizations to survive, while acknowledging the need to evolve with the times? Does evil ever really truly change shape? The magic realism that might have provided an answer to this debate is submerged by the violence. As the lights came on with the end credits, I realized that I had watched this film in a fully packed theater. I also noticed, and this is no exaggeration, 100% of the occupants there except me, no exaggeration, 100% were men, begging the question, who did the trailer of this film speak to? Go figure for yourself. Kantara Chapter 1 is now in movie theaters. Watch in Kannada if possible. Up next, Sunny Sanskari ki Tulsi Kumari. Soon, a lot of this content, reviews, etc. are going to be for members on this channel only. More on that later. But make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you want more reviews and interviews. My name is Sucharita. Thank you for stopping by.